Coach David Buchanan. Coach Chuck Smith. Two legendary high school football coaches. This is the Coach's Office, a behind-the-scenes look at Kentucky high school football.
Welcome to the Coach's Office, behind the scenes with Chuck Smith and David Buchanan. This is Season 3. This is Episode 17. I'm Chuck Smith. I'm joined by co-host David Buchanan, podcast editor, flashback storyteller Mike Yoakum. Our YouTube version of this podcast is at TCOP. That's t.c.o.p. And if you would hit like and subscribe, that helps us out a lot. Hey, tonight is our state championship special. We have 3 of the state championship coaches as our guest coaches tonight. We're really excited about that. These guys finished off a fantastic season with the state championship ring. We have the 2A winner, Jay Volker. Am I saying that right, Jay? Your last name?
Volker. You're close enough. I'm good with it.
Volker, okay. And Beechwood. And then 3A state champion Hunter Cantwell of Christian Academy of Louisville. And then a 4A winner is Sean Thompson of Paducah Tilghman. And we'll bring these guys on here shortly. We have an anonymous, tough topic question to cover tonight. And the question is, what is the right time for administration to take a program in a different direction, outside of the obvious problems? And then we will discuss Mr. Football and the Mr. Football candidates later on in the show as well. Before we get bring on our guest coaches, I want to congratulate all of the state championship winners. Sayre and Chad Pennington won Class A, the Class A state championship. As I said, Beechwood and Jay Volker won the Class 2A state championship. And Cal and Hunter Cantwell won the Class 3A state championship. That was his 3-peat, 3 in a row. So he's an old pro with this. He's been on this show. This is the 3rd time being on this show, I reckon. And then we got Paducah Tilghman and Sean Thompson, who the 4A state championship. I believe that's Sean's first. And then we had Bowling Green and Mark Spader, the 5A state champion. And that was Mark's and Bowling Green's 2nd in a row. I think they've been there 3, so they got a good run going. And then Trinity and Jay Cobb, the 6A state champion, that's their 2nd one in the row as well, making this 40 out of 48 years. 40 out of 48 years that either Trinity, St. X, or Male has won the state championship in the largest class. That's quite a domination. And really, it's in recent, when they went to 6A, it's the 16th out of the last 18 years that one of those 3 have won the largest class state championship. David, these guys are excited about to talk about their state championship experience. You want to bring them on?
Hey, guys, I know y'all are really busy. We're honored that you would take the time to be with us tonight. We'll try to be focused, brief with our questions, so you guys can get back to celebrate. So congratulations and thank you.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah. Hey, Hunter, I'll start off with the question, and then we just go. I'll tell you what we do. We go 2A, 3A, and 4A response. How's that sound? And my question is, coaches, every team starts the season with the goal and the dream of winning a state championship. Was there a specific moment, a specific game in which you realized, that this was a realistic goal? These guys are good enough to do this. They're determined enough to do this. They're determined enough to be the state champion. Is there any moment during the season that just kind of hit you? Jay, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. I've kind of said it throughout last week and a bunch of pressers and things like that. We were unfortunate enough we lost down at Mayfield in the semis last year. Kind of a heartbreaker, 31-28. And we had a bunch of seniors that were going to return this year. And as soon as they all came in and kind of had their exit interviews, and every single one of them was basically saying the exact same thing. What can I do to win a state championship? I mean, we had a quarterback that threw for over 4,000 yards, around 50 touchdowns. And he was like, what do we got to do to be able to run the ball to win a state championship? And he's not a runner whatsoever. He's not a great athlete back there. But his numbers died, and he was okay with that because he knew he wanted to win a state championship. And then everybody just came through and followed suit saying the exact same thing. So when you have a bunch of seniors that are willing to do whatever it takes, didn't matter about their stats, didn't matter about anything else except for winning state. I knew it was a bunch of guys that were going to lead us in the right direction and knew we had a chance at that point in time.
Awesome. Sacrifice for the team. Love it. How about you, Hunter?
Yeah, for us, it was really late into the playoffs. It was the Central game in the playoffs for the region championship. They had beat us. They beat the brakes off of us is what they did in the regular season. And we were battling injuries. I think there was, always that goal was to be at Kroger Field and win the last one, but didn't know if we were going to have, the horses to do it. And I had a lot of guys that needed to step up. We started 2 freshmen on the offensive line in that game, and they carried us into the semifinals and the state championship. Starting tight end was out. We just had a couple. We were just banged up the whole year. We were able to get a couple guys back for that game that we thought had season-ending injuries, but just really weren't sure if we had enough in the tank to beat Central. And those young guys and the guys behind the starters that were hurt just continued to get better and continued to believe. We didn't have a big senior class this year, but had really strong leadership out of that class. And then, had some really talented players in that senior class that really kept our focus, and we were able to go out at home and get a big win. And we were able to go over the Central hump. We thought, we might have a chance to make it to Kroger Field, and that turned out to be true.
That was an awesome win because I'm gonna be honest with you, I had my doubts that you could pull that off after the way they beat you the first time, Yeah.
But, so did we.
Yeah. Sean, how about you?
For me, it really goes back to actually playing against Coach Cantwell and Cal. I guess it was 3 years ago at this point that we were good enough to play at that level. When we were down in 3A, and then, that became the goal then. And I, as a coach, kind of took some things for granted, young guy, not realizing it's not that easy to get there, and it took some time. But we had these guys that had been there, and like 16 of them played as freshmen the last time we were there and had an opportunity to play. And as they grew up, we get last year to Covington Catholic and had that let down and on that field, every one of those juniors came up to me and basically said, we're going to win this thing before we get out of here. Let's go to work. So then going into this year, that was the expectation. And it was just not messing it up and making sure every week that they remember what it felt like when we had that let down at Covington a year ago. So really that was what we worked for every week this year.
Well, it takes leadership, doesn't it, guys? You got to have that leadership to get that thing done.
Absolutely.
David?
Yeah, so coaches, what was one thing you did a little differently in 2024 as compared to the past that you think helped your team to win a state championship? Coach Volker, I'll let you go first.
I think one of the big things we did is after we got through our gauntlet of a 5A, 6A schedule for our first 5 games, we went into district play, and I'm not going to lie, we really pulled off. We almost treated it like an off-season program at that point in time. I was keeping our guys as mentally and physically fresh as possible and really just trying to get them to the games on Friday nights. We were winning games 61, 62, 69, nothing, stuff like that. And then we would pull them in Saturday and those Saturdays became very intense, very aggressive for us. And I think that kind of allowed us to keep an edge throughout a 5 to 7 week period where we weren't playing great games. My first year last year, we did not take advantage of that, I don't believe. We kind of played every week the exact same. So just kind of taking week by week and allowing our strength coach to really go after it and keep our guys fresh, but also attack them on Saturday mornings was huge for us.
Well, Coach Cantwell, what would you say?
Yeah, well, I did something I've never done as a head coach before, and that was play my quarterback on defense. And,
hey, you were our tough topic earlier in the season.
Yeah. That dilemma turned into a tough topic on this podcast, and I really appreciated your all's insight and wisdom in that. And looking back on that decision, I think we're probably not 3A state champions without our quarterback Connor Hodge playing on both sides of the ball. People forget. I know a lot of people don't follow Cal, but the quarterback from the previous season, his older brother Cole Hodge, as a freshman, was an all-district safety for us. Played defense as a freshman and was our backup quarterback. And when he took over the reins, I was adamant, like, no, our quarterbacks don't play both ways. It's too important. We like to throw the ball around. So if we lose that part of our offense, it's going to be a tough year. But just reaching out to guys that I trust and have done it a long time at a high level. And, David, thank you so much for taking the time to help me out with that situation, and Chuck, you as well. And playing Connor on defense, it was nerve-wracking every game. People watched him play. He's not just a free safety back there. Like, he will come up and absolutely knock your brick off. And every time he did that, I just held my breath. But he was a leader on both sides of the ball. He gave us a spark on both sides of the ball. He, believe, had 2 interceptions in that Central playoff game. Was dominant, with the ball in his hands offensively. And so, that was something that I had never done before, wasn't really a fan of, but, so glad that we made that decision to have our best 11 on the field in all 3 phases.
It certainly paid off. And I'm proud of you. It's the old guys that don't like to change. I'm proud of you adjusting when, initially I knew that just made your skin crawl to even think about it. But, hey, it turned out great. Hey, Coach Thompson, what would you say?
First thing we did was, well, I guess it's really 3 things that we did. The first thing was we, as a coaching staff, went off deep into the woods, into a cabin, and looked in the mirror and said, well, asked what we were doing wrong, because we have all this talent here and we just weren't getting it done. Didn't make much sense. So we really broke us down as individuals, as coaches, and then as a team, and looked at what we could do better. The big thing that comes up with us is lack of discipline all the time. And I don't know that our kids are that undisciplined, but they're penalty-wise, we were killing ourselves with penalties. And a lot of it was stuff that was controllable. So, we were able to clean that stuff up. And one of the other things that we changed is, and I'll touch on that in a minute, I think helped with that. The second thing we did was we made friends. There's a lot of you old timers out there who like to go back and look at football and dig deep into it. And every 3 or 4 weeks, we sent, those 3 or 4 weeks out to those guys, our friends, and had them break us down and look at our tendencies. And for us, what it allowed us to do was to pick what tendencies we wanted to keep going into the playoffs, to change it up. We ran the ball very little until the last 2 games of the season, and changed up how we were running it at the time a little bit, because those tendencies we had created and were able to create because we knew they were tendencies, we were able to change up in the last 2. So that was the second thing. And then the third thing was, this is the first year I haven't called plays for myself. And what it did was free me up to manage everything. I didn't have to think about offense anymore as deep as I was before. Kobe Lewis stepped in and was my offensive coordinator. Him and Corey Robinson was my pass game coordinator. And then Steve Loveless was my defensive coordinator. And then I had enough coaches I was able to make sure they didn't have a position either. So they were managing offense and defense and running that part of practice, and I was running it as a whole. And that helped clean up the rest of the discipline issues we were having.
Good deal, coaches. That was great stuff, guys.
That was
and our
really
listeners,
good. Yeah.
our listeners are going to benefit from that. So, all right. So, Coach Smith, you go ahead. You get them started on their individual.
Yeah, that was good stuff. I really learned a lot right there, guys. Appreciate it. Hey, the first question, Hunter, is to you, and this is your 3-peat, 3 in a row. You know, what's the secret in winning them back to back to back? I mean, it's really, some people. Another part of that question is, which is harder? Is it harder to win the first one or to keep winning them? You know, what's the secret here?
Yeah, well, I think it's definitely harder to keep it going. It seems like, every year it's a monumental task to get to the last one. I think we probably do a lot of things similar to the rest of the coaches out in the state. I think one thing that comes to mind specifically, just because I played the position and we rely on it so much at Cal, is I think you got to have a great quarterback. I think that's one thing I've taken away from these 3 trips to Kroger Field. And you look around, all classes every year. I mean, that rings true. The teams that are there that are having success, all have a dude under center. And so I think for us, it really starts and ends at the quarterback position. We put a lot on that position. We're a high volume offense. We're under center. We're in gun. We're RPO. We're naked bootleg. We'll get in 21 personnel and go 7-step play action drop. We screen game. We just ask a lot of our quarterback, and so that has really turned into kind of year-round developmental process. And all of our quarterbacks, Connor this past season and Cole played basketball. We're multi-sport athletes, but we have kind of developed a system where we're meeting in the mornings. We're throwing 2 times a week in the gym before school starts. We're watching film. We're breaking down the offense. They're being quizzed by me, tested by me regularly throughout the winter and going into spring practice. Just because we feel like that they need that, and our team needs that for this offense to go. And so we've really just put a large emphasis on their development. Quarterback gurus and all that stuff is great, but I want them with me. I want them to be able to run our offense and to incorporate our footwork and to know our reads and progressions. And even in, if a guy can handle it, we'll put run game checks and pass protection checks on their plate. And we've been able to do that the last 3 years. And so I think just a tenacious approach to developing the quarterback position has really paid off for us and really been a big part of our 3 trips and 3 wins at Kroger Field.
And that makes sense because your quarterbacks and all 3 they're Mr. Football candidates. I mean, they're exceptional. And but I think for Jay and Sean, I think you say their quarterbacks are Mr. Football candidates. So
absolutely.
I think there's a lot there. Hey, Sean, so my first question for you is, your passing game was exceptional in cold weather. And, we hear you can't do that. We hear, when it's cold, you can't throw it. And so do you have any advice for coaches out there? How are y'all able to throw the ball so well on a cold December night? I mean, all we hear is you can't do it. You got to run the ball.
Well, you got to practice doing those things. That's the best advice I can give. When that's what you do every day, our receivers catch balls every day. So when it got cold, they caught in the cold. And the big name for them is Jack, the quarterback. Jack James he's a good leader, but he demands a lot out of his receivers. He wants, he wants the ball caught. And when it gets cold, he doesn't take anything off of it. I'd say in practice, he kind of turns it up a little bit, actually. And then when they don't do it, he's on them. So when you have a guy like that that's leading them, the coaches don't have to do much because they want the ball. We have so many guys that could play that receiver position. You drop 1 or 2, you may not get another opportunity between Jack and and us taking you out. So we just really honed in on that. Some things we've done in the past, is dip their hands in ice water and all that stuff. No gloves, stuff like that. But I think really when you just have the expectation, this is what we do. And for us to be successful, you guys got to be able to do this. And just in reminding of them of that constantly, then they're going to live up to those, because kids want to please. They want to meet the expectations that you set for them. And I think that for us, that was a big thing. But it goes down to really Jack making good decisions and putting the ball to the open receiver. In the state championship game, we had a lot of guys step up and make incredible catches that, that would have been great in warm weather. It's just, understanding the moment. When you want to finish something, you put all that work into it, and this is your job. This is how you impact the team, and living up to that is what makes you successful, and in return makes the team successful. I think kids just step up to the moment.
I like that. It's a good answer, Coach.
Thank you.
Hey, Jay, I have a question for you. Your early schedule, you played, the Pulaski County game was pretty tight, and then you lose to a Covington Catholic. But I've noticed after you lost to Covington Catholic, then you just really started dominating everybody. What did that loss mean to you? What was that week like after that Covington Catholic loss?
Yeah, we could say it was a loss, but we got dominated. Like, they physically beat us up. Going into that game, we thought, our guys thought, our coaches thought that we were pretty physical. We were good up front. And it's kind of something that we had started to hang our hat on a little bit. And I think we went into that game thinking we were a little bit more physical than we actually were. And they kind of handed it to us. I think they ran for like 450 yards against us. It was something that, as a defensive coach, I was almost embarrassed to kind of have coached in that game after looking at the stats and everything like that. But it was just kind of a shot in us to kind of refocus. I didn't change anything. I actually pulled off of our guys a lot after that week, knowing we were going into an easy district game. And I had promised them that if they gave me everything they had going into those 5 weeks, that we would take care of them. They all play both ways. So we're just trying to get them healthy at that point. But it was just a time for us to start to refocus and get back to, we're not that good. We still have to continue to get better. We still just can't trust that we have a big offensive line or a bigger defensive line. We had to continue to know our rules, to know exactly what our scheme is, to know who we're going to. And defensively, it allows us to get on the board a little bit and adjust on who we actually were. When I first got there, I had adjusted and been a little bit of Coach Rash's defense, a little bit of mine. That game, I went a little bit back to old school with his things. And I realized after that I needed to stick to my guns and know exactly who we were. And really, I think that's the reason we end up beating LCA in the semifinals, is because we play a game like Covcath. If we don't play a game like that and get beat like that, we get beat by LCA because we hadn't played a game that physical with a good offensive line, a good defensive line. So we didn't change a ton. If anything, I'd say it was just an opportunity for us to refocus and realize that it was time to get to work. And if we were going to win state championship number 18, then we weren't going to just be able to hang out. We were going to have to get better every single week, and our guys continue to do so.
Hey, so Hunter, you've already talked about these guys a little bit. So, I think these two cats are worthy of this question in this time. Cole and Connor Hodge, how are they similar and how are they different?
Yeah, so right off the bat, start with Cole. I think Cole's he's, when you think of the quarterback position, you think of Cole Hodge, and competitor, but also just very even keel, very cerebral, can pick you apart. A good athlete in his own right. A really, really strong leader. And then Connor's kind of the fire to Cole's ice a little bit. Like, you can tell Connor's a free safety receiver playing quarterback. A lot of times with him, you just like, hey, take a deep breath. Like, he's used to going out there and playing with his hair on fire and hitting people and, making catches and breaking tackles and going and scoring. And they were both extremely fun to coach, and they both brought a lot of energy to the position. But I think you could definitely, if you look at Cole and Connor, and you say, Cole, that's a very cerebral, even keel, just pick you apart kind of guy. Quarterback, kind of a true quarterback, and Connor's just, he's just a football player underneath center, just as liable to clap back at you, at the quarterback position if somebody's in his face as he is at the free safety position. Both wanted to be great, both incredible work ethic, put the time in. Different styles. I think Cole, even though he's a great athlete, was more comfortable staying in the pocket and delivering the ball downfield, where I think Connor was a little bit more comfortable outside of the pocket. And so we changed some things in our offense to suit both those guys. And at the end of the day, I think one of the things I've learned in the playoffs is players just got to go make plays. There's a lot of 50-50 opportunities, whether that running back's going to get tackled at the line of scrimmage, or he's going to get an extra 5 yards, or the quarterback's going to complete that pass, or the DB's going to break it down, and on and on and on. And I think both those guys, just made plays. They made plays for us in the playoffs when it counted, when we were playing other good football teams, and that was a big reason to our success.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah. Hey, Sean, your offense was very, very explosive this year, and it gets a lot of attention for your success. But, kind of looking back at your scores, your defense was outstanding. And talk a little bit about what your defense meant to your team this year.
Well, I can tell you that explosive offense gets its tail kicked every day in practice. I cannot remember the last time the offense won in practice. We do a lot of good on good, and the offense doesn't win ever. But no, the defense, Coach Love, been coaching a long time, and he did something that old coaches don't do, and he changed for me. He went out of his 3-4 into a 3-3 stack for me, and really created a lot of chaos. And I think he ended up loving it and getting excited about it, because he could do all the stuff he was doing before, just with different personnel, and actually made it more effective. The way they fly around and fly to the football, and all the different blitzes and things that he could do, and shifts, and just confusion that he create. For me, it was just being able to create that controlled chaos. Be chaotic on defense, and just have that mindset. We're going to hit you, and it's not just going to be me. I'm bringing 10 others with me to the ball, and he really drove that home. The other thing I wanted from him was turnovers, because I wanted to get that explosive offense the ball back, and they really took pride in that. For us, it's finding things, the kids get excited about. So we had the turnover trash can. So anytime there's a turnover created, the kid who created it go dunk the ball in the trash can. And it's just something, fun for them, things that they can take pride in. And we got to where we were creating a lot of turnovers and getting the ball back for the offense. So for us, the offense was good and scored a lot of points, but the defense is what made us a championship caliber team. They took us to the next level when they created that craziness that he's doing now, and he did a really good job of building it into something that was his. And there's times I'll be on the headset like, "Love, what are we doing?" And his response always, "I'm just rolling the dice." And it worked more times than it didn't. But for us, again, I'm going to say it, that's what made us a championship caliber team.
Gotcha. Hey, so the last question, Coach Volker, Coach Hergott, a lot of us think he's the best player Beechwood High ever had. I had two really good teams at Paris, and Coach Hergott and the Tigers, he was the quarterback back then. They got us in 93 and 94. He was a great player, really made Mike Yeagle's offense go. So he's been terrorizing Kentucky high school football for a long time. He's special. But I'm curious, though. I know that when you took over, you're a defensive-oriented guy. Part of the deal is Greg will continue as the offensive coordinator. What's that transition been like? That sounds like something that would require some pretty skillful navigation. How did you guys make that work?
I mean, he's obviously the real deal. I just read, and I didn't even know this until after the game, that he's been a part of 14 of the 18 state championships as either a player or a coach. Yeah. I'm the third coach that he's coached for that he's had state championships with. He just loves Beechwood. I mean, it would be hard to sit here and say that he's the best one. Brandon Berger is if he listens at all, he's a part of our coaching staff as well. Yeah. Those two do an unbelievable job with our offense. But when I took the job, I obviously knew I was not getting rid of Greg Hergott or Brandon Berger, two of the all-time greats at Beechwood, and they've both been unbelievable. I mean, they've been able to guide me in some different ways to make sure that we're not doing anything that's going to upset the community or anything like that. So those guys have been unbelievable. But it's easy to guide it when he scores 50 points a game. It's as a head coach, I stay out of their way. It's awesome. I mean, it's one of those things where you're going to score 50 a game. I'm not going to say a word to you. I don't listen to their game plan. I tell him whether or not it's 4-down territory. He calls the plays. And it's worked. I mean, I think he loves the freedom. I'm never going to yell at him for a play call or anything that he decides to do, anything like that. The only thing hard is for an offensive coordinator and a former quarterback, the guy has some serious energy and some serious juice that you don't expect from your OC. Yeah. He's fired up all the time. He's yelling at refs. He's doing all that stuff. And that was my MO. So when I got in, I was like, oh, okay. I'm going to have to I took a back seat a little bit. They're like, hey, you're pretty calm on the sideline this year. I'm like, if we're both going nuts, like, I don't know how our team is going to react. So that's about the only thing that I've had to adjust a ton, is just being a little bit more calm, collective on the sideline, and let him do him and be crazy. But you score 50 a game, you can do whatever you want.
I think that's a pretty good way to approach it. So, hey, if Chuck's anything to finish up, guys, thank you all so much for your time. This is great for our listeners, not just that you're the state championship coaches, but you said some really good things here tonight that if guys want to learn and become better football coaches and better leaders, I think they'd learn a lot from this episode. And we're very appreciative. Go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, I second that as well, guys. And we can't thank you enough for taking the time out. We know you're tired after a long season, and we appreciate you taking the time out. Hey, enjoy designing them state championship rings. I know that's going to be fun.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for having us on.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
But, yeah, those guys did a really good job, and I appreciate how creative they were, and I also appreciate them. You know, how tough is that to take your staff out in a cabin and say, hey, guys, we got to look in the mirror. This is our fault. We got to get this fixed. I thought that's impressive. That's a tough thing. That's a tough thing for any coach to do, but especially a guy like Sean that's so young.
Yeah. I think they all had some good ideas on how they navigated it. Hey, let's get on to the tough topic, and it's anonymous again. It's what is the right time for an administration to take a program in a different direction outside of the obvious, like something illegal or immoral or unethical actions by that individual?
You know, I wanted to have a real clean, clear-cut answer, and I struggled finding one. I really did. So what I tried to do is I tried to flip it and look at it as when, as a head coach, I knew that, hey, you know what? It's just not really clicking here anymore. Here's what I would say. When you're an administrator and you're convinced that your vision for the program is superior to the head coaches, to the point that you know what, the head coach thinks we need to do A, B, and C, and I'm not going to do A, B, and C. I don't like it. I don't think that's what we need to do. I'm not going to do it. I think when an administration reaches the point that they're no longer willing to support the version or the vision of the current head coach, then I think they gotta make a change, because if you aren't really sold as an administrator that your head coach has got the right plan, you're not going to support him. You're not going to help him get what he needs to get. And you know what? The kids are going to suffer. The kids are going to suffer. So I think in those two pieces, everybody's got to be on the same page. And if you reach the point that you can't get on the same page, then I think you need to make a change. And I don't necessarily think it's a case always of somebody's a bad coach or anything like that. But, I mean, you get, at the end of the day, this is always about the kids. Okay. It's not about the adults. It's about the kids. And as an administrator, you got to make sure that you're willing to support the things that head coach wants, because that makes sure the kids get what they need. And if you're not going to do that, I think there's going to need to be a change.
Yeah, that's a good answer, David. I took it as from an administrator standpoint too, because I felt that's what the question, or felt like the question was coming from an administrator. But my answer is when the coach loses control of the direction of the team and he's not able to get it back. Okay. When he loses that control, he's not able to get it back. I think that a coach evaluates at the end of every season where his program is, as he pursues his vision for the program. You know, where's it at? As I'm in my progress in this plan to get this program where I want it. Where's it at? You know, I think as a coach, you make that evaluation at the end of every year. Then you make your adjustments and your fixes to stay on track to achieve those goals. Okay. So it is a process. It takes time. You can't judge success solely by wins and losses. I don't think the administrator can judge that success of the coach, because he is evaluating every year. He is staying on his plan. He is staying with his vision. So you can't judge it solely by wins and losses. Like I inherited a program at Campbellsville as a young coach. And that program was in pretty bad shape. It had low numbers, very low numbers, and it had low morale. And my second year there, you know, we had 25 kids on the team. That's all I could get out was 25 kids. 14 of them were freshmen, and only 11 of them were upperclassmen. So we were getting ready to go into the varsity season with 11 upper-class kids and 14 freshmen. Now, we only won 2 games that year. That's all we won was 2 games. And I thought that was one of the best coaching jobs I have ever done. I really did. I mean, I was really proud of that, winning 2 games with that roster at the end of the year. So, but I was also on track with my plan to turn that program around, because I had 14 freshmen and I knew I was going to have to build the numbers up from the bottom up. And so I felt pretty good about it. I felt like I was on track, but so I say that to say you can't judge success solely by wins and losses. I think as an administrator, then I think an administrator has to ask themselves some key questions when evaluating the coach. And I think one of them is, does he have a vision? Okay. Does he have a vision? Is he on track to see that vision through? Okay. And can he overcome the obstacles that are hindering him from his progress to stay on track to that, stay on a track for his vision? And if those answers are no, then it's probably time to make a change.
I like that answer. You know, on that third piece of it, can he overcome those obstacles? That's where I would probably turn to the administration and say, are you willing to help him deal with those obstacles? And if you're not, then yes, you need to make a change. So I like, that was good detail in the answer. Hey, so let's get into our Mr. Football candidates. And I want to share a list with you here. When we started this in 2022, we looked at this group as sophomores. These are the people that we picked out as potential Mr. Football candidates. And I think a lot of them are still in the ballpark. Deuce Bailey at Bowling Green, Brady Atwell from Owensboro Catholic, Cortez Stone from Central, Austin Alexander from Cooper, Antonio Harris, who was the 6A player. And you'll have to help me out on this. Was Deuce the 5A player of the year?
This year.
Yes. Deuce was a 5A. So we predicted one there. The 6A, Antonio Harris from male. The 4A player of the year was Monovan Quisenberry. We talked about him. We talked about Bryce Button, the quarterback of South Warren. But that was the extent of our list. Now, since that time, some guys that I've added to the conversation. I think Jack James from Tilghman would be added. I think Jaron Johnson from Union County. I think Clay Hayden from Beechwood. Brock Kaufman and Luke Pennington from Sayre. And then I tell you what, in trying to dig some things up, Devil May Care on Bluegrass Preps. If you follow his stuff, he does a pretty good job. And he had a write-up that included a lot of these guys. He made a really good argument for Connor Hodge from Cal, who, Coach Cantwell talked about. So those are some of the people that I've got that I think are on this list. I don't know. So what do you know? Do you have a number one, and who are some names on your list for Mr. Football?
Well, I just followed along the list that you have right there. I do have a number one, I'll talk about him in just a second. But I like adding that Connor Hodge. If you remember correctly, his brother Cole Hodge, I thought should have won it last year. He would have got my vote last year. And I said that on the show. But here's what I got to say about it, and then I'll talk about the guy that I think should win it. Okay. Everybody has their opinion of what Mr. Football should be about. Is it their career stats? Okay. How do you evaluate Mr. Football? Is it their career stats? Is it their senior year stats? Did he win a state championship? Is he the best college prospect, in the state? Did he lead his team above and beyond the potential for success? I mean, everybody has got a list of how they think Mr. Football should be evaluated. I don't know if the people who select Mr. Football has this list, but I think everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got a player, a quarterback or player or a player on their team that they think had a great year and should be considered for Mr. Football. So I'm no different here. And the choice that I have checks all of those boxes that I just said. He threw for over nearly 3,000 yards this year, 39 touchdown passes, ran for 8 touchdowns. And he did that all 3 years that he was a starter. So his career stats are going to be Mr. Football worthy. He is a college prospect. He signed a college scholarship at Eastern Michigan University this year, and he led his team above and beyond. And the only box he didn't check was he didn't win a state championship. And he came, but those are, all of those checks right there are not the reason I think he's Mr. Football. And nobody else is going to know this except for me, because he was on the team that I held. And I'm the one that knows, and nobody else is going to do this research when they select Mr. Football. But this kid was worthy of it, in my opinion. He came into his senior year, David, after losing all of his skill people as a junior on the junior team. He lost all of his skill kids. He lost all of his top receivers, his running back. He even lost them on defense, all the secondary. So the speculation of the team was it was going to be a down year. And it was going to be a down year for his team. And right before, add salt to the wound, right before the season started, he had 3 of the top 5 players on the team decide not to play their senior year. So here you go, getting ready to start into your senior year. 3 of your teammates and 2 of them were two-way starters. One of them would have been the co-captain. I mean, they were the top 5 players on the team, 3 of them. And they decided for various reasons to bail out on this kid and not play their senior year. And I think basically they did it because they didn't think the team was going to be that good. And so they quit and leaving any team with 5. You take 5 starters off any team going into a season, and you're going to hurt. You know, you're going to hurt. That's a big hurt, and not many can survive that. And sure, he was upset about it. But instead of letting it run his senior year, he found a way to take all of these young guys, and these positions were filled by inexperienced sophomores. And he took those inexperienced sophomores and he took them under his wing. He put them on his shoulders, and he basically found a way to lead his team to a 12-2 semifinal finish, and only a couple of plays away from making the state championship appearance. So in my mind, you know, that sounds like a description of what a Mr. Football should be all about. And if I had a vote, my vote would go to Bryce Button, the quarterback at South Warren High School. He would get my vote.
Hey, you make a great case for Bryce. You know, one thing that's impressed me, and because I do have a little more of an insight because of our relationship, man, in a day and time when guys are moving around like crazy, going school to school, I've got a lot of respect for Bryce for hanging in there when, you know, he didn't have around him what a lot of the other players had around them. And
100%.
He hung in there at South Warren, and he got a lot of respect out of me for that. I guess I'm supposed to pick a Mr. Football. I'm not kidding. I'll say these are the guys that at one time or another. Here's the thing. I'm not going to pretend I got a number 1 when I don't. I just don't. I mean, I just don't. There have been times that I thought that it was going to be Deuce Bailey. There were times that I thought I would go with Brady Atwell. There were times, I tell you what, Jack James, gosh, he was impressive in the state championship game and has had a great career. Then after my buddy at Bluegrass Preps, I mean, I really gave a lot of thought to Connor Hodge. I mean, a guy that has played 3 positions and has 3 state championship rings. I think that's pretty impressive. So I know you get on me for sitting on the fence. So I guess I'm sitting on 5 fences tonight.
I don't think it's a clear-cut choice, David. I don't.
Yeah, I mean,
there's pluses and minuses to everybody. Everybody's got their argument. Everybody's got their case and why their kid should be Mr. Football. I get all that.
You know, the other thing, too, I wanted to say is this. I think some years you may think one guy's career outweighs another guy's season. Sometimes somebody's – I mean, I really even struggle with what the definition is of Mr. Football. And I don't know. There's still a lot of things about it I don't know.
I just explained it to you.
What's that?
I just explained it to you.
But some people get really wrapped up in, oh, this is a career award. Oh, this is a season award. Oh, you can't get this if you're not the state champ. Or, I mean, I don't know. I there's still a lot about it that I'm not sure of. And I mean, I think it's obviously very similar to a lot of conversations they have about the Heisman Trophy. So I will say this: if I'm ranking this group right now at this very moment, I would rank number 1 Connor Hodge. But I'm going to say this: 10 minutes from now, I could pick somebody totally different. And also something else about Connor. you got an insight with Bryce. I got to spend some time with Marvin Dantzler Saturday at the state championship. Marvin and I were working together at the KFCA hospitality room. I'm going to tell you something. Marvin can't say enough good things about Connor Hodge as an athlete and a football player. And, I think that probably that insight and what Marvin thinks of Connor probably is influencing me a little bit. And you know what? Here's what's crazy. A week ago, I wouldn't have even had Connor on my radar. I just hadn't really thought of him. I mean, I've always thought of Connor as Cole's little brother. I hadn't thought about him, but I think there's a pretty good case to be made for him. So anyway, he's my number one right now. If we talk about it in 10 minutes before we end the show, I may have somebody else, but right now he's my number one. So I do want to mention this a little bit looking forward. And this is not a complete list, okay? But some 2025 Mr. Football candidates. We've got Marlon Harbin at St. X, wide receiver. Evan Hampton, who you talked about earlier in the year, running back at Owensboro. Cam O'Hara, the very good quarterback at Cooper. Jarvis Strickland at Paducah Tilghman, and then Chase Burton at Male are all some guys in that 2025. Have you looked at any of that next list? Or
I haven't looked at the 25 list. I do notice your 26 list down there, though.
Yes.
I think the Seneca driver of Boyle County.
Yes.
I know that I coached his older brother, and I know what his mother was a student when I was teaching there, and you could argue that she was the best athlete, boy or girl, in the entire school. So she was quite an athlete herself.
Yeah.
And I know that like I said, he's got two other brothers that's played. I coached one of them, and Easy. We called him Easy, and he and then his younger brother Seneca was in middle school when I was there. And I know what kind of player he is. He's going to be he'll be a legit Mr. Football candidate.
I got you. I wanted to add some others here. Zane Johnson just won his second state title as a quarterback at Trinity. Timmy Emongo. I was on the phone with Coach McKee just last night, and I tell you what, Coach McKee's very, very high on Timmy, and definitely sees him as a guy that can be a Mr. Football in Kentucky. Cade Gooden at Collins, a very multidimensional, talented quarterback. Darian Hobbs at Cal plays linebacker. One of your former assistants is coaching Brady Hall at Pulaski County, and Brady's going to be one of the top linemen in the state. And then the last name again, this is not all inclusive, but Jordan Haskins at Bryan Station, the son of J.T. Haskins, he may be a guy. So, there's some of the good ones coming. And I think we're going to try next week talk about Coach of the Year. Is that correct?
Sounds good to me.
I got you. Okay, well, man, you talk about next week. We're going to try not to go for 2 or 3 hours, but I'm really excited about it. We're going to have Ed Rawl, Raymond Webb, and Randy Reese on together. It's going to be our final episode of the year. It's going to be our Christmas episode, which I'm also going to reshare the Christmas episode with the kids, because I thought that was a fun episode, and we had a blast with it. But next week, we'll have those 3 old coaches on there, and, I love those guys. I think it's going to be a great show, and then we'll talk about the Coach of the Year, and then we'll be heading into Christmas. We'll be getting going.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that show as well, David. Some old timers, some of the older guys that some of our older listeners will recognize those names, and they'll want to tune in for that. Hey, don't forget to hang on after we sign off and listen to Mike's historical segment. It's always really good. And appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Sports, and in particular high school sports, are woven into the fabric of Americana. High school sports are part of the DNA of communities across the country, and that is certainly true in Kentucky. Fans know the stories of the big names, but there are many names and many stories that have been lost to history. This series highlights those forgotten heroes. Welcome to this episode of Forgotten Heroes. I'm your host, Mac Yoakum. Usually we talk about forgotten players or forgotten coaches, but today we're going to take a look back at some forgotten teams and the fluke that has forever etched their place in Kentucky history. We recently crowned 6 new football state champions. Since 2007, there have been 6 football classifications in Kentucky. From 1975 to 2006, there were 4 classes, with 4A having a state division and a Jefferson County division. And from 1959 to 1974, the biggest schools in the state were in the 3A class, but there was a catch. And today we look back at 1971. In 1971, there were 193 schools playing football. 88 were in Class A, 76 were in 2A, and if you're doing the math, that left 29 in Class 3A, and all 29 were in Louisville. And for playoff purposes, those 29 were divided into city schools and county schools, because at that time there was Louisville City Schools and Jefferson County Schools, and the strong Catholic schools were with the city schools. The county district was divided into east and west districts. In the west were Stewart, Fairdale, Western, Southern, Doss, Butler, Pleasure Ridge Park, Durrett, and Valley. And in the east district were Moore, Ballard, Fern Creek, Westport, Wagner, Seneca, Jeffersontown, Eastern, and the state's best team in 1971, Thomas Jefferson. The city schools were in one district. Central, Manual, Mayall, Atherton, Iroquois, and Shawnee were joined by the powerful Catholic schools DeSales, Trinity, Bishop David, St. X, and Flagey. When the playoffs rolled around, unbeaten Thomas Jefferson and Seneca squared off for the East region. Thomas Jefferson's great running back Mike Northington scored 4 touchdowns in a 35-14 win before 9,000 fans at Fairgrounds Stadium. Stewart won the West region 7-6 over Butler to set up a Stewart-Thomas Jefferson final. Thomas Jefferson used their blazing speed to score a 56-14 win to move to the state final. The finals of the city region saw Flagey face off with St. X. 12,000 advance tickets were sold, and at kickoff, 18,000 fans filled Fairgrounds Stadium. Flagey didn't disappoint, taking home a 26-14 win. The Braves secured a spot in the 3A finals with Thomas Jefferson. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Flagey with size and power, Thomas Jefferson with speed to burn. The same 2 schools had met in 1967 for the state title, and Flagey won that contest 21-0. And Flagey, interesting, had to raise $40,000 before June of the next year, or they would be forced to close. Before 12,000 fans, Flagey struck first on a John McGrath 26-yard pass to Jim Schuler, and the point after missed. Mike Northington put Thomas Jefferson on the board with a 1-yard run, and again, the point after failed. There were 2 minutes left in the game when Northington scored. No one else was able to put up a touchdown, and the score finished 6-6. Now, here's the thing. Under KHSAA playoff rules, the game had to end in a tie. There was no sudden death or overtime provisions in a championship game. There could only be sudden death in first or second round games so that one team could advance. A coin toss awarded Thomas Jefferson the championship trophy to take home. Flagey received gold footballs to take home until a duplicate trophy could be ordered. Imagine that, a state championship game ending in a tie. And Flagey, they didn't close until 1974, so I guess they raised that $40,000 they needed. Flagey and Thomas Jefferson are just a couple of the forgotten schools who have won Kentucky State football titles. They're the only 3A schools. The other state champions that no longer exist include former Class A state champions Lynch East Maine, who won 4 state titles, Versailles, who won in 1962, Elkhorn City, who won in 1964, Mount Sterling, who won in 1969, and Heath, who won in 1986. And from the 2A division, Henderson City, who was the 1959 state champions. May their legacies never be forgotten.